I'm going to say something on this interview that I never said before. December 12th, December 10th through the 12th was the hardest for me this year because when I disabled my Instagram, I had this is my first time ever speaking about this publicly. I had put on Twitter, all my friends and my family forgetting all my teachers. I love you all. It's over with. See, I don't do man, I'm about to kill myself. I don't want no attention.
Right.
I'm about to, I'm going to get this. I don't do no horse playing. That's horse playing.
Yeah.
When you talk about it. I was going to, the way of the samurai. Just smash myself because I was to the point I didn't want to live no more. That last video.
Next on Inspiring Beauty and Believers.
Because I had, 3 firearms in the house at that point in time. I got up and literally sold all of them, like that day.
And sometimes when you're in that state of depression, it's hard to see a way out.
It was definitely hard for me then and trying to reflect on it because nobody really talked about depression or anything back then.
But for men, right, naturally tend to be, and yes, this is a stereotype, but it's also true, tend to be more aggressive, more angry. It tends to be safer to express anger than it does to express sadness.
Generations that came before us don't know how to do it. And so they can't really help you do it. So they just tell you to suck it up. And then
He's done miracles. Back again. He's done miracles on me.
Welcome back to Inspiring Beauty and Believers. I am Song, and we are back on our series For the Love of Men. Hi, guys.
Hi.
What up? Hey, yo, hey.
Mi amigas, amigos.
I don't speak no Spanish on here, but that works too. So today we have Marcus, King, and Shannon, and of course, Dr. Sam.
What up, Doc?
Doc in the building.
So we are going to be discussing, where was that title page?
Depression.
Conditioning of men, when we're talking about the mental health of men matters and depression. So, all right. So Doc, can you start us off with just explaining or give a description of like what depression is and how people can know if they have it or all that other,
I was like, if they have it?
If they're experiencing it?
Oh, I was like, you shouldn't self-diagnose yourself.
Well, okay, we live in a stage where everybody goes on Google and they self-diagnose themselves anyway. So how would you know if you are experiencing depression?
Touche. I wouldn't recommend that you diagnose yourself on Google though anyway.
Yes,
need to put that out there.
Please don't do that.
But depression is basically persistent state of like low mood, loss of interest in activities, hopelessness that causes significant impairment in your daily, everyday activities, right? So what's a good example? Like if you woke up and you had a headache and you're in a bad mood, that's not necessarily depression. Or if someone passed away and it's been 2 weeks, that's not necessarily depression either. Like it's grieving time. But if this is a persistent depressed state in terms where your sleep disturbance, anxiety, you're anxious, you're irritated, slow body movements, feelings of hopelessness, worthlessness, trouble thinking, concentrating, frequent thoughts of death and suicide, unexplained pain like back pain, headaches, stomach aches, feelings of sadness and hopelessness, those are more serious signs of depression. And you typically have at least 5 or 6, not just one symptom.
Did you say like sleeping?
Yeah, so no. So the common misconception is that you're sleeping all the time when you're depressed. Some people are not able to sleep. Some people sleep too much, or some people have disruptions in sleep. So that are not injury related. But if you go to sleep early and then you wake up in the middle of the night, you're up for 4 or 5 hours, can't go back to sleep. So.
Okay. So our first, go ahead.
Thanks. But I just want to start off with some statistics. Okay, so 84 men a week die by suicide. A week. Not a month, not a year, a week. Okay, 75% of all suicides are male, mainly because it takes a lot of the way people tend to kill themselves tends to be more physical aggression and trying to find the most appropriate word, and I don't have it, but most women are not going to commit or kill themselves in that manner. It takes a lot of aggression, and that testosterone piece helps with that. 25% of men live with a mental illness, either diagnosed or otherwise. Men are obviously, why we're having this, less likely to get help, and depression is the most common reason why men die by suicide.
So one of the things that I have seen a lot in my family, and then people I know, when it comes to, especially in the African-American community, and you can, say if this is correct or not, but a lot of times with African-Americans, especially men, they self-medicate instead of actually dealing with their feelings, because they've been told since they were young boys, like, men don't express their emotions, men don't cry, men don't do this. So then they just internalize everything, and instead of actually dealing with it, then they just drink, or they smoke, or they use drugs, or they go to sex, or however they use to cope with those feelings, instead of actually saying that I think I may have an issue and I'm going to get help for it. Is that?
Yeah, I mean, that's fairly accurate. There's a stereotype that men should be bravado versus showing weakness or emotion. And that's given since young childhood. Boys are supposed to be strong, they're supposed to be aggressive, they're supposed to be reckless, and those stereotypical behaviors are normalized. So if you feel anything outside of that norm, well, if I just drink a couple of drinks, I'll forget about whatever's bothering me. If I get high, I can forget about what's bothering me. And now that weed has been normalized across, and no disrespect to anyone that dibbles and dabbles, that's not the point of this, but now that it's been normalized across the country, there's more people that are using that to self-medicate versus go seek help or continue to reach out to a friend or support or whatever. So yeah, that's accurate. And since I'm on the soapbox already, alcohol and weed are actually do the opposite, right? So we'll take alcohol. Alcohol is actually a depressant. So if you're already depressed and then you're using alcohol to then help with your depression, it's going to put you in more of a depressed state. People think, oh, I drank and I passed out and went to sleep. You probably have the worst sleep when you have been drinking. It seems like it initially, but if anyone has ever drank too much or even drank just a little slight much, you realize like your sleep is not that great. It's inconsistent, or you're waking up early, or you're waking up not feeling like you got a restless night of sleep. So actually using depression or alcohol to self-medicate is counterintuitive.
Interesting. So then when people, drink a lot, maybe you have those family members or friends who they drink a lot and then they're like the life of the party. But really they might just be depressed and they're not really dealing with it, but they seem happy when they drink, and that's Absolutely. Why everybody tells them to drink. So, but it's not doing that. Okay, no.
Because once that high comes down and that sinks in, it's a depressant. So your entire nervous system shuts down, turns off. So if you're already depressed and then your nervous system shuts down, then it's just on top of it. It's harder to move and get out of that state.
Mm-hmm.
Well, a question real quick. So there are different levels of depression though, right? Because you can have a mild depression, you can have a more severe depression, maybe where you need medication, stuff like that. So when it comes to, and I'm not asking you to throw anything out there that may like anything that you can't throw out there. I'm not asking you to throw anything out there like that. But just if you're looking at someone, what tells you, oh, okay, this is just mild depression. This is like the beginning stages. We can, kind of tackle this with fill in the blank. Oh, this is more severe. Like we need to, whatever it may be. What tells you that?
So typically it's the number of symptoms you have. So if you have 2 or 3 symptoms, you can consider it mild depression, also depending how long it is or what it's related to. So if your depressions are related to grief and loss, you can say that it's probably more on the mild side versus a major depression that's severe, because it's related to losing someone and that grief process. Whereas severe depression, you typically have like 16 of the symptoms and you're like not able to go to work, you're not able to function at home, you're not able to clean your house, you're not able to do your daily living stuff. And or if you have 4 or 5 symptoms, but suicidal ideation and intent, a plan and a means, then that's more severe depression.
Okay.
Did that answer your question?
That did answer the question. That was good. As it goes along with that, what I can say for myself, just when I was, years ago, just coming back from Afghanistan, getting divorced, a bunch of other stuff happened, lost my house, like all that stuff. What you said, the second side of what you said, was exactly what was going on. Like literally, and I tore my ACL, so I wasn't active or anything. So pretty much it was everything like all at the same time happening. So it was in the bed all the time. Like it's literally what, it was 10 years ago, somewhere around there. Like it's literally when my son learned how to cook breakfast, lunch for himself, dinner for himself, all that stuff. Because literally I was just basically like, this is what you need to do. Go in there, do this, do that. I just basically sit in bed all day and do almost absolutely nothing, you know? And the whole suicidal ideations thing, once that kind of came up twice that I can remember. Those two times were the only real times that I can remember during that period of time when I was like, I need to get up and because I had 3 firearms in the house at that point in time. I got up and literally sold all of them like that day. So literally what you're saying as it deals with, you know, the more severe of it or the higher level of it, that's exactly everything that was going on. You know, it's just weird to look. It's just interesting and weird to look back on it, because even then I wasn't going like to counseling or anything else. I was definitely that guy who was, okay, yeah, this is going on, but I think I'm okay. I can take care of it. I can do it myself. I can, you know, whatever. I can, you know, start exercising again. I can start doing this. I can start, you know, finally getting outside and talking to people. And I remember having a conversation back in the day with Marcus, and he was like, are you going to counseling or anything? And I was like, nah. He was like, okay. like he just gave me a look like that's probably the wrong answer, but I'm not going to tell you it's the wrong answer. I'm gonna just give you that look. And then we just kept the conversation going. But it was that conversation that I can remember, that one. And I think another one I had with somebody where I was like, I just need to call the VA. They ain't good for much, but they could be good for finding a counselor that ain't going to cost me $1 million. So, you know, that was probably one of the best decisions I made in my life.
Yeah. And I would say like with suicidal ideation too, because the conversation scares people, and it really shouldn't, because I think we could save, I don't want to use the word save, but save like a lot of our friends if we weren't so afraid to have that conversation. But there's levels to it too, right? There's some people who sometimes just have like passive suicidal thoughts where it's like, I just don't want to do this anymore. I don't want to be here, but don't have a plan or an intent or a means or an access to means, right? There's people who have a whole plan, but like if their plan involves a gun and you don't have a gun, like, okay, like on the level, like as a clinician, where do you assess that, right? Whereas you had access to a firearm and a plan was probably very easy to formulate. And so like, yes, you probably should have been in counseling, but you know, you did get rid of it and do what you needed to do to kind of recognize like, oh, I'm here. How do I get out of the hole?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I mean, I know my situation was probably a lot maybe similar to a lot of other veterans or even just men in general who, whether they're veterans or not. But I think I know the main thing that that was the defining factor in that scenario was my son. Like that was the defining factor in that scenario. If it had just been me coming back and having all that stuff snowball and everything else, I cannot say for sure that I would be here today. But because I looked him in the eye every morning and had to get up and drop him off at school, had to get up and drop him off at his mom's house, had to get up and like go outside and get him like whenever and whatever. Like for those time periods that I had to recognize this is about more than just you, like that stuff was put in my face consistently and constantly. And once I actually was like, okay, like this ain't it. Sitting in bed watching the Kardashians all day. Like that's not my life. Like we gonna do something else. You know, and then once that came up, that thought process started pushing, you know, into, okay, I need to pull out get my knee got fixed. Let me go ahead and get my running shoes. Let me go ahead and do this. Let me do that. Let me get back in the gym. Let me do all this stuff. Let me start actually getting back around people and not just being in the house 24/7 or just getting out just to go to work and literally almost getting fights with customers at the counter and stuff like that. Like literally just that shift and that change of him being there. That was literally the defining factor.
I love that, and that you found even one person in your life that helped you to realize that I need to make a change, even if it's just for you know, because of him. And sometimes when you're in that state of depression, it's hard to see a way out. But I think, especially when as parents, looking to our kids is what really helps us to make that decision. Like, okay, I can't do this because I got to think about them. So I know my brother, he talked about, or he shared about his story of going through depression. I'll let him share his own story, but you know, even after when his first son passed. So.
Is that my cue?
That's your cue.
I'm messing with you. Yeah. It was definitely hard for me then, and trying to reflect on it, because nobody really talked about depression or anything back then, because that was probably what, 2003? It was around 2003. So
2002.
2002. It was like 2002, 2003. But and it's kind of crazy because sometimes you just learn to shut out your emotions, because you were raised so many times when you're growing up and you get hurt or something happens, like, you know what I'm saying, you better shut up or I'll whoop you. Like, you know what I'm saying? So you like, dang, I don't want to whoop him, so I'm just going to compress these emotions. So you just don't know what to do with it. And that's where sports and things like that come into nature. But losing my son, I say by far, that's the hardest thing anybody could ever endure. In my eyes, that I could see. Like, you can lose a lot of people, but you never expect to see your child leave before you do. You know what I'm saying? So it was just at a point where I was really depressed. I was really down. I was sitting in the house, no light, no blinds, none of that, you know, stuff going on. And at the time, I just really went through a funk. And then it just was like at a point, even that the plant that they gave me was dying. And I was like, bro, I just can't save nothing no more. You know what I'm saying? So it was really just a rough. I was sitting there like, I was like, I can't even save a plant. Like, you know what I'm saying? No green thumb, no nothing. It just was rough. And I know when you processed it, you can laugh about it, because though it's a traumatic thing, I've learned to see that God has blessed me to be able to help a lot of other people who go through it. Because I believe the things that you overcome is really just a testament for somebody else who hasn't. But one of the things that I really did was that I've been thankful for is my grandmother raising me in church, because being connected with God, it was sitting there one day and I was in this funk, and school was supposed to start and supposed to do some things in that nature. And even before that, and I talk about the story with Marcus, who's on here, and that's pretty awesome, is because I found my purpose always in basketball, was always an outlet. If it was any kind of issues, any kind of aggression, you could always get out there, get physical, and release that energy. You know, it could get transferred out to the basketball court. So even though I was going through a lot of stuff during that time, give me one moment. Sorry about that. Got to put all phones on silent. But yeah, so basically it was definitely a hard time. And through that time, like I said, the depressed stage, like I said, I met Marcus when I came out there in 2001. But the death came, you know, a little while after that. But I had went through that, and a lot of times, because I have went through something like that, it was like, yo, a lot of times you just don't know how to compartmentalize it or talk with anybody, because oftentimes you don't show your emotion to another man. That's just not something you do. A lot of times that's where the women are at in your life, and that's where you show that vulnerable side. You know, I've had uncles and people who've navigated me, but I've never came to them crying because it's always been like repellent, you know what I'm saying, as far as the aspect of don't show that weakness, don't cry. You know what I'm saying? If you get whooped, if you keep crying after you get whooped, you know what I'm saying? So it just was very hard for me at times to really just express what it is and even understand what just happened to me. You know, like in that aspect, it's just like, dang, man, this is something messed up. I don't even know who I could go to in my near vicinity to tell me how to navigate losing a child, losing a son. But one of the things that I definitely heard that was always awesome, like I said, my grandmother took me to church. She told me about you know, always being connected to God, always praying. She was very much a prayer warrior with all the family members we got and myself. Like, she definitely prayed a lot. But when you start hearing God speaking, that was the one thing, like, God was like explaining, like, if I could sacrifice my son for a better cause and put myself to the side, why can't you do the same? And when I heard that, I was like, yeah, because my son did have cerebral palsy and I was going to the therapies and stuff like that. And unless you're in that person's shoes where you have to fully rely on somebody else, you don't know that feeling. Like, you know what I'm saying? As much as we're going to try to fight old age or anything in that nature, try to take care of yourself best as possible, you never, as an independent person, want somebody else to have to depend on somebody else.
Right.
So I can never say what it is. But one thing I do know is that in heaven, you know, he's in a better place there. You know, he's doesn't have to deal with his disabilities and things of that nature. And so the great part about it, though, is just finding, like, to make a long story short, or a long story long, is to pretty much just say, is to say, find your purpose. Like, at the end of the day, I found something else after he passed to put my energy into. After I've processed it, I went through it. Basketball was that. And like I said, I even went through down moments of basketball, getting injured quite a few times, you know what I'm saying, in that aspect. But you still find a purpose of being able to give that or give it back to somebody. I was going to school, you know, got my degree out of that and was able to do more. And out of that process came child after child after child. You know what I'm saying? I was like, I lost one child, ended up coming right back and had four. Like, it just is like, so no matter what you lose, they don't never replace him, but it's definitely a blessing to have them as well.
Definitely.
Subscribe so you don't miss next week's video.
Whole one of the things that really comes up for me in that, and not asking for help or knowing how to, is because showing emotion for men, for lack of a better word, has been weaponized against them on so many occasions that it's sometimes not even worth showing emotion. And so then the knee-jerk reaction to bottling it up, suppressing it as much as you can, and just moving forward, even if it comes down to the space of, you know, medicating in different ways, whether it be alcohol, drugs, whatever that is for you, or other avenues like sexual attraction or fornication, whatever you want to call it, like pursuit or gambling. And all of these outlets are a beautiful distraction, because you'd rather embody your emotion or bottle up your emotion than express it to the wrong people that then will weaponize. And that's men and women. So when Jay's like, yo, I didn't know who to talk to in that state, it's because generations that